everyone. My name is Adrienne Garland, and welcome to Sugar Coated. Sugar Coated is a podcast that was born from the notion that for far too long, women and other people who inside felt like they just didn't fit in maybe small or even large ways, had to sugarcoat their words, their style, or in general, their way of showing up in the world. This podcast started out as a dedication to women leaders. You see, I wanted to shine the light on all the incredible work that women do and how they're making an impact. And I still do. But I realized that a key reason that women have struggled, in my opinion, is that they've had to conform to certain cultural norms and ideals, which are inherently designed to keep those outside of the norm from standing out. This has prevented more women from being recognized as the powerful leaders that we truly are. Join me, Adrienne Garland, the CEO and founder of She Leads Media, each week as I dive into raw conversations with some remarkable, badass women that will help you to strip away your sugar coat and go in the direction of your incredible dreams. Hi, everybody. My name is Adrienne Garland, and welcome to Sugar Coated, a podcast where we have real conversations with real people, no sugarcoating. I'm so happy today to have as my guest Annie Scranton. She's the founder and president of Pace Public Relations, an incredible New York City public relations firm. I've known Annie for a couple of years now, and I'm just so inspired by her positivity and all of her work that she does to help both men and women, but very focused on women. I'm very inspired by her work that she does to help women to gain the visibility that they deserve in the media. And the conversation that Annie and I are going to have today is all around how during this crazy time that there are still opportunities to get your voice, your opinions, and your thoughts out into the world. So welcome, Annie.
Thank you so much for having me, Adrienne.
I'm so happy that you're here. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, what your background is, and then we'll get into what people can do today to help themselves to get visibility.
Sure. So I run a PR firm called Pace Public Relations. We've been in business for 10 years, and clients retain us to get them featured in the media. So we focus on traditional media, which we think of as broadcast television, streaming television, radio, podcast, newspapers, magazines, and the vast world of digital, different websites and news, lifestyle, et cetera. And I started the company after I worked as a TV news producer for 8 years. I was what's known as a booker. So I was responsible for booking the guests who my anchors would interview on the show. So I worked at almost all of the major network, Good Morning America, The Today Show, MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, HLN. And I got a lot of experience and met a lot of different people along the way. And because I worked at so many different networks, it allowed me, when I sort of got the idea to start my company, it allowed me to start off on very strong footing because I sort of had all these built-in contacts already. And, you know, it's not so easy to get yourself booked on TV.
No.
Yeah, exactly. But it comes down to connection. So that's really, I think, one of the big benefits of hiring a publicist is their connections.
Wow. Now, did you go to school for that? Like, did you know that you wanted to do that?
When I was little, I would watch the Today Show in the morning with my parents, and I would always say I wanted to be Katie Couric. So I knew that I wanted to work in news. I just loved TV news. We watched the news in the morning and after dinner and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But once I kind of got a reality check of how hard the road ahead for being on air was going to be. Like I was born and raised outside of New York City. I was not going to move, far away, somewhere in the middle of the country
Yeah.
to start my career. It just was not for me. So no, I went to Smith College, and there I studied English, but got a good foundation for writing and, critical thinking. And I got my first job was at a PR firm in the city, but it was only because it took me 5 interviews to get my foot in the door at MSNBC, 5 different interviews. But then I finally got my first job as a production assistant working for Dan Abrams.
Wow. Holy.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Wow. That's incredible. And then I'm just curious because I always love, how did you start your business? Why did you start your business? If you were, doing so great, I mean, you had incredible roles, high profile, lots of fun. What prompted you to start your own PR firm?
Well, it was out of necessity. I was working as a producer at Donnie Deutsch's show at CNBC. This is going back to 2007 or 2008, and his show got canceled. And I found myself being informed that I was going to be laid off and without a job in a couple of weeks. And I had, never experienced that before. I was a young woman living on my own in the city. I had no money in the bank, all that kind of stuff. So I was sort of panicked. I sent an email out to everyone I knew saying, I need a job. If you hear of anything, let me know. And I got an email back that changed the entire course of my life. It was from a publicist who I had booked his clients to go and be interviewed on the show with Donnie. And he said to me, I have kind of an interesting, unique idea. I know you've never done PR, but I have a client. I can't even remember who it was. It was a broker, I think, and he wrote a book on the markets. And he said, if you could get him booked on any network, on CNBC, on any show on CNBC, I'll pay you $500. And I said, okay, well, I'll try. And I sent this broker's information to my friend who worked on a dayside show, the noon show. And she said, oh, he looks great. Can he come on next Thursday? And so kind of like that, was my light bulb moment where I realized that my currency, my value, my unique brand was that I had access to these producers to get the coveted TV booking. And so now when people say, what's your elevator pitch? I always say, I can get you on TV. And so that's, one of our specialties still.
That's amazing. And over 10 years that you've been in business, which congratulations, by the way, because so many businesses don't make it that far. And that's another reason that I'm just excited to talk to you today, because you are a successful woman business owner and, you have a great company and you're thriving. And I just think it's incredible. But over 10 years in the media, I'm sure that, people who were once there are no longer there. So what is, I guess, your secret to keeping that network growing and going and growing? Because I'm sure so many people have left.
Well, I mean, absolutely nothing takes the place of hard work, and what we do, it's really like such a grind, and I love it. But you said it, in TV, in journalism, reporters and producers are switching jobs all of the time. And sometimes they're moving to different shows or to different networks or to different newspapers or magazines, what have you. And some of them then leave the industry entirely. So we have a multitude of ways that we stay on top of all of the contacts, but that's sort of a big part of my job, is making sure that I maintain those relationships that are really important to me. And also, I think that we are able to maintain our relationships because we're pitching, I hope, guests and story ideas that the producers are receptive to and that is helpful to them. And so that kind of keeps our street cred up with these different producers.
Yeah. I think that there's a huge lesson there, not just for anybody that, wants to get on in the media or whatever. I think the idea of keeping your network growing and strong and sort of using both tools and then just human connection and keeping up with people and keeping those relationships going, that can benefit anybody at any time.
It's so true. I mean, what I do is sort of emblematic of just the bigger theme, which is relationships are everything in every single industry. And, there's in my line of work especially, but in most, it's really hard to sort of separate work and your personal life. For us and my husband, our family life, it's completely melded together at this point because some of our best friends work in the media and I pitch them our clients and, and that's how, we have been successful. And so I just think though, in any industry, you're only as good as your word. You're only as good as the connections that you have. And, you could have the best product in the world, but if you can't get access to the right people, then, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. So I love that. And one of the things that I especially love is how you guys have melded together your work and your life, and that there isn't necessarily like, okay, I'm shutting the books on my work, because it is an ongoing thing. But the fact that you love it is why you've created this life for yourself. And I think that's so cool. And again, it's like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, if you can do that and, make it work, to me, I feel like that's nirvana, right? Like if you love that and that's what you do and you can earn a great living and support all the people that you support in your business, it's just such a good thing.
If you don't love what you do as an entrepreneur, you will absolutely not succeed. And I had better love it because it's really, really hard work. And in some ways it's gotten easier in 10 years, but in some ways it's gotten harder, and just my role has evolved and I've been, forced to learn new things and to pivot and to get creative. But if you don't have the passion for what you're doing, you're never going to be as successful as you would like to be.
Yeah, you're screwed.
Exactly.
So what I also wanted to talk about is you help people to get into the media. Now, you do that through leveraging your relationships, but I think that there's also a lot to be said for the actual person who's trying to get him or herself into the media. If somebody is looking to just start positioning themselves as an expert or a resource, is there something that you could suggest to people? Like if you eventually want to get into the media, or if you want to get into the media tomorrow, like what are some of the things that you should be doing today?
Absolutely. First step is you need to have a good website. And by good, I mean, you don't have to spend a ton of money. It doesn't have to be like super fancy, but it needs to be very clear and representative of who you are and what you can offer. What are you about? You'd be surprised how many websites actually don't really talk about exactly what the person does and what they're offering. And I think the step actually before that is to figure out what your personal brand is. As I mentioned, mine is I can get you on TV. And so, that's usually enough then to start the conversation, to get people going. And then from there, I can launch into my whole spiel. But I think that you need to first figure out what it is that makes you different from every other business owner, lawyer, doctor, author, startup out there that's in the space. What makes you different? What makes you unique? And why should people care? Why you? What's in it for them? I mean, at the end of the day, people just really want to know, what are they going to get from it? And when you're pitching the media, that journalist wants to know, well, what's the takeaway going to be for the reader of this piece, And so It's so critical to be able to make sure that you're providing information that actually is useful to a potential reader.
Yeah. And with there being so much competition out there for everything, how does one differentiate themselves, so much? Like, take me for example. I have this platform, She Leads Media, and Yet there are other companies out there that do the same thing in essence as I do. Now, I think that I'm a unique person, but I do have trouble sort of articulating what makes me so different. And I think a lot of people can relate to that because they're offering the same type of services or, they're just sort of a good person. Are there any type of suggestions for people to really find what that uniqueness are there exercises you could do? Can you ask people what would be some
Yeah.
tips?
I mean, my first piece of advice would be to ask your customers, ask your mom, ask your husband, ask your friends, and that may be a little scary and it may feel weird, but you are always going to be the hardest judge of yourself and likely will be modest, especially women, I think, are modest about, what sets them apart. We don't want to feel like we're bragging or coming off as too forward. So I would start by polling everyone in your life, personal and business wise, that you've worked with. What was the experience like? What made this a better experience than working with others? The other thing to remember too is that, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I don't know what my personal brand is. I don't know what makes me stand out from others. I mean, that's okay. You just have to think about it. I mean, and maybe there's not something right now, but you need to sort of think about what that may be in the future. Because if you don't have something that really makes you stand out, then you're not going to get too far. So, is it your customer service? It doesn't have to be that you are offering something so unique that nobody else does, but is it your customer service? Is it the fact that you have a built-in network that you can just automatically introduce customers or clients to? Is it the fact that your social media reaches X number of people? Is it the fact that, your prices are more competitive than someone else? I mean, there's lots of different ways to sort of position yourself to get ahead. But I would definitely just start by pulling people in your life and then take some time and also research, others in your space who you think are doing it right, who you would view as a competitor, and spend some time on their website, on their social, check them out. And then you might get ideas, from doing that competitive analysis.
That is such great advice. And it gives me comfort. And I hope whoever's listening, it gives, you comfort as well, that it doesn't have to be that you have this proprietary, new technology that is like nothing else out there. I think that's the stuff that can get really intimidating. But I love how you said, maybe it's the way that you provide customer service. Maybe it's the way that you make people feel. That can be a differentiating factor. And I love that. I think that's so cool. So the other thing that I was thinking is, there are so many hardships that are happening right now because of the coronavirus and just in general as an entrepreneur, it's a slog, it's tough. How do you get that attention? And I think there are a lot of people out there that are feeling like, oh my God, there's so much in the media just about this and all of the tragedy and things like that. But at the same time, I can't help but believe that there has got to be some positive opportunity too. Are you suggesting to your clients or any advice for anybody that wants to sort of put themselves out there now?
I would actually strongly recommend putting yourself out there now. If you have a relevant tie-in to the coronavirus, to what's happening currently in our world, that is going to help people, that is going to be impactful, that is going to be a really feel-good kind of story. Or if you are somebody who can be viewed as a thought leader or an expert. So, impactful, an example could be if you are a remote learning company and you have a product or a tool that can help all the parents out there that are really struggling right now homeschooling their kids, that would be a great example of a type of company or brand that should, I think, absolutely try to get some awareness about what they do. If you have a feel-good story, you manufacture hairspray and you've turned your plant into, manufacturing hand sanitizer, or if you are a frontline worker or in some capacity you've helped somebody in the situation, that's another example. And then the third, I think, would be as a thought leader or an expert. So if you have expertise in supply chain issues, then this would be a great time for you to go out and talk about, is there going to be a food shortage? Those kinds of issues. So those would be the three buckets. But if you don't fall into one of those categories, I do think that there's still some stuff that you can do once you've taken the time to figure out your personal brand and make sure that your website is, really representative and reflective of that, and that your social media is all sort of synced up and saying the same thing. Depending on what your industry is, there are absolutely print and digital outlets that are still covering non-coronavirus news. It is getting less so as, this sort of continues to sort of take over, the world. But there are, like, for example, we're still working with different lifestyle and beauty editors, who their readers come to them for new content, about new products and new offerings. Yeah. So what I would recommend is to do your research and do your homework on the outlet that you want to be featured in. If your dream is to be featured in Marie Claire, then go to the newsstand, buy Marie Claire, go on their website and go on there every day and really become an expert in what kind of content they're putting out there, because that way you can know if you have, the right sort of tone and message to pitch to that outlet.
Annie, I love what you're saying about doing your research. And I think sometimes the PR industry gets, a bad rap, like, oh, it's all, fluff. It's not, because what you just said about, pick up the magazine, read it cover to cover, understand what types of articles and stories and features they're doing, and then taking a good look at yourself and your business and saying, does what I do fit in with this, or could it, or how could what I do help Marie Claire or whatever other publication it is? That takes a lot of thought and a lot of work. And it's not just, let me call this publication and tell them about myself.
That's never going to work.
No.
And also you're just going to look sort of desperate and like an idiot. So especially with journalists, as a former journalist, they don't get paid well. It's sort of a thankless job. And, but what they do, their craft and the product that they're putting out to society is so important. And so I think that journalists become, offended if they're not being taken seriously and getting email pitches that are in line with what they're doing. It doesn't mean that they're going to actually cover your story. They don't owe that to you. It's completely up to their editor's discretion. But if you don't do your research, there's absolutely zero chance that you're going to be successful in getting the media attention that you want.
I love that. And it's definitely a mark of respect or a demonstration of respect that you have taken the time to do that. And even if for that particular pitch that you're giving, it doesn't get picked up for whatever reason, it goes back to, but you have just signaled to that journalist that you respect them. And that's one of the building blocks of relationship building.
100%. I mean, and these days, it's really easy to find a reporter on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, online. I mean, so, there's really no excuse. You can very easily, in a matter of a few seconds, really find out the beat, the likes, the dislikes of that particular reporter you're trying to reach out to. So it's not even like it takes all that much time.
Yeah. So how are things going right now? I mean, you have your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on. Like, what are some of the things that you're finding success with your clients and getting them the coverage that they're looking for? Or are your clients demanding more from you now? Like, I'd love to just kind of understand what people are thinking, because you're in the service business.
Yeah. I mean, I think there are certain industries, of course, that are just, getting totally decimated. So our clients that we were working with in the travel space, in the event space, in the luxury space, they're just trying to actually preserve their businesses right now. So forget about, PR and media, but there are then other clients of ours who are doing really, really well. Like one of our clients is a frozen entree company called Saffron Road, and they make all frozen entrees that are organic and natural, and it's with a world cuisine. They're really delicious, but part of their issue is that they source what makes their entree so good is that they source the ingredients globally. So a lot of their spices come from directly from India and from Asia. And we put out the founder and CEO as a thought leader talking about how potential supply chain issues would impact his production of the various food offerings. And from our pitching, he did an interview on Bloomberg Television. He was interviewed by NPR. He was quoted in the New York Times. And so that was hugely advantageous, I think, for their brand, because it just sort of puts them on the map and gets them, the coverage that they're looking for. But B, the people who are reading and listening to those types of outlets and publications and radio shows are amongst the most powerful, wealthiest, and just it can open up so many more doors. I think for our clients. So I would say that for the clients that we have who have one of those three offerings right now, yeah, we're definitely feeling the pressure, because now is a real moment, and now could also mean if they're going to make it or not, as a company themselves. So I think there's a lot more, our clients are all really great, but I think we put more pressure on ourselves right now because it means more.
Yeah. It's so interesting to think about a business that is potentially suffering, like you just mentioned. They're not able to source the ingredients, which then has a trickle down effect on their business and the products they can offer and everything. And I think what happens sometimes with business owners themselves is you can get stuck in that mindset, like, oh my God, how am I going to increase my business? But if you can look at things from a different perspective, like you were able to offer and suggest, like, yeah, but let's position you as a thought leader about supply chains and how supply chains globally are affected by this, and how it's not just affecting me and my business, but all these other businesses and what we're doing. And here's some suggestions. I just think that that's a beautiful thing. And like you're saying, it also holds that CEO up as somebody that knows how to navigate through crisis and change. And it like works on so many different levels. And I think that more business owners have got to get creative when it comes to thinking like that, because you can get that tunnel vision. It's like what you need almost as an entrepreneur to have that tunnel vision, but then that can also be something that could potentially hold you back, especially when you're going down that, like, oh my God, I'm going to go out of business path.
Yeah, I mean, I think that every single person who is a founder or the CEO of a company has life experience, work experience that can be translated into useful information for others. We've all learned from failures. We've all had successes. We've all, had different experiences that have brought us to where we are today. And, even if you're not in a position to get on Bloomberg Television or have the New York Times interview you, I would strongly recommend to start thinking about the issues, the trends that are that pertain to your industry right now. So for example, my client and supply chain is a perfect example of a broader issue affecting the food industry. And you could go on LinkedIn and you can, write a 200-word post about your thoughts as it pertains to the trends that are going on in your space. To me, LinkedIn has been such a valuable platform, and I try to post on there at least a few times a week. And it also is a good exercise because it starts getting you thinking of yourself actually in that role, and I think you'd be really surprised at the interaction and, the inbound requests that, people wanting to connect with you and talk to you, because it's all about sort of elevating yourself, like, yes, you run this company and that's so important, but, it's always good to think a little bit bigger too.
I mean, everything that you're saying, I'm like, that is great advice. Great advice. Great. Everything is like, yes. I love it. Oh my gosh. I was actually going to ask you, I do want to just, put a pin in it and say, yes, I think LinkedIn is an incredible platform that holds so much opportunity. And I don't necessarily think that people take advantage or leverage it as best as they possibly can, but there's still plenty of opportunity to get seen and to demonstrate your thought leadership and your clarity around these things. I think there's so much more opportunity there. So, whoever is listening, definitely be mindful. You don't want to be just posting things, like, think about it, but it is great. And I love it. I've actually seen a lot of success, not so much for myself, but from a sales perspective, when I'm working with other clients. I think it's a wonderful connection platform, but you have to do it the right way. You have to be a human being. So yeah, I'm like a huge fan of LinkedIn. But the other thing, well, I guess there was two things that I was thinking about as you were talking. Not everybody has the opportunity to get on the New York Times. So there's smaller, more local or, online resources that people can tap into. And I just want to, confirm with you, like, those are good places to be too. Like, it doesn't have to be CNBC or the New York Times.
100%. I mean, absolutely. Like, I mean, everyone's on LinkedIn, everyone has a LinkedIn profile. Everyone is on Instagram, and that's a way for you to start. But it's really, though, you need to actually do the work and write the pieces and come up with what your point of view is. Because if you start being disciplined and getting sort of in that groove, then when you are ready, to pitch the media, you're already going to have so much experience that's going to put you ahead of the game of everyone else that is your competitor. And, I have absolutely gotten new clients who've seen social media posts of mine. I've had different referrals from people who have noticed a post on LinkedIn. So, I definitely think that it's something that should be worked into your weekly, if not daily routine.
And then the other question is, what do you think about podcasts? And not necessarily, the big ones that have millions of listeners and everything, but what do you think about some of these more niche podcasts? Do you think that leveraging podcasts is a good way for people to gain visibility?
Absolutely. 100%. I think that more and more people, especially younger ones, are listening to podcasts. There's a few that I listen to religiously. So the issue is that there's so many now. So sometimes it's hard to find the exact one that's perfect for you. But I always tell my clients podcasts are a nice long interview like this one. Thank you. And so it's great. It's great because you can really like dive into a lot more of the nuances of what your expertise is in, as opposed to, a television or traditional radio interview, which is only a few minutes long. So I would say that podcasts are definitely something to source to pitch yourself to. And then once you are able to get on and you have that link, post it everywhere, and do as much as you can to make sure that everyone in your world, everyone in your network is going to listen to it.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think that this is all such incredible advice, and I'm so passionate about making sure that I'm giving the resources and this incredible knowledge, especially to women leaders, women business owners, because I think for far too long, we, have sat there with our hands crossed, waited for somebody to call on us. And it needs to be over. We need to stand up. We need to write. We need to pitch ourselves. And I think so many people are afraid to do this, but how you broke everything down, the advice that you're giving, I do hope that it takes away people's fear and that they do just start doing things like, yes, do it mindfully, do it thoughtfully, approach it from your point of view and your unique position, but do it.
Yeah. I mean, no one's going to do it for you. Right. So it's you just and I think that sometimes like the hardest piece of advice is just to, I'm not perfect. There are things that have been on my to-do list for months, and so but it's just trying to get like Ariana Huffington talks about those micro steps, and so to just, try to take 5 minutes a day to start to do one thing or to start one thing that could be, productive and something you haven't done previously. But now's the time because, we're going to come back through this, and small businesses and entrepreneurs are, the economy, everything is going to rebound in time, but there's going to certainly be a period, and we're in it now, where it's going to be really hard. And so you just have to make the time to do everything you can to make sure that you're positioning yourself and making yourself stand out amongst everyone else.
Yes. Hallelujah. Oh my God. And just like on a personal note, I know that you have a daughter at home, you're running a business, your husband runs a business. Like, how the heck are you doing?
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's, what can I say? It's hard. I mean, it's hard. We're both entrepreneurs. We both have run our own businesses. I have 10 employees. He has 3. We are really busy, like knock wood. So that's a good thing. But our daughter is a year and a half, and, it's a lot. And we live in a New York City apartment, and it's small and, all that kind of stuff. But we're healthy. Our families are healthy. So we're just trying to count our blessings and, literally just only think of one day at a time, because if you start to go too far ahead, it is not a good, at least for me, not a good path forward.
Yeah.
So trying to stay in the moment.
And you have to be, you don't have to be anything, but it's like you want to make sure that you also have that positive spirit and positive outlook, because you sort of need to be there for your employees, for your clients. You need to, to be the one that's kind of leading them and saying, come on, like, we're going to get through this. Let's just put one foot in front of the other. So I admire what you're doing greatly. And I just think that you have such a positive spirit and positive attitude. And you've inspired me just from this conversation. And then, when we were talking a little bit before, it's really inspiring, because it's hard, but you're doing it. And I hope that other people are inspired by everything that you've said and everything that you're doing, and that we do get through this. And oh my goodness. Yeah. And I think that there are going to be so many things that change, and there are going to be people that are going to go out of business, but there is also always going to be tons of opportunity.
Tons of opportunity. You just have to, be open, say yes, and do the work. And if you believe in yourself and you put in the time and energy, I think it's going to work out.
Yeah. Love it. Well, Annie, how can people reach out to you and find you?
You could find me at our website, which is PACE, P-A-C-E, publicrelations.com. I'm on Twitter at Annie Scranton, and you could find me at the same on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all the rest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And please stay healthy and please say hello to Mike for me.
I will. Thank you, Adrienne. You
This
too.
is just absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
Take care. This is the She Leads Podcast Network.